This is The Final Word, Season 16, Episode 17. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins with you. The show brought to you, as always, by Westfield, London, and Westfield, Stratford City. Not as always, but as often is the case. And a new thing, if you don't want to hear the pre-recorded ads that you might have heard at the start of the show or that you might hear in the middle of the show, you don't have to anymore. There is an ad-free feed available through Patreon. New invention, constantly innovating, constantly moving forward. That's the final word promise. We'll come to more of that later in the show. We have a lot of things to get through. We have, the IPL finished. A whole lot of T20 international cricket is being played around the world in preparation for the World Cup that is disconcertingly close to starting. There's a bunch of other stuff. There's a bit of county cricket at the back. But most of all, most centrally to the people who listen to this show will want to know how the Edinburgh Marathon went over the weekend. Did our crew make it? Did everybody get around? Did they get their 10Ks done, their 21Ks or their 42Ks, depending what they were doing? Did they make it home in one piece? Adam Collins, tell me more.
I can confirm all of the above. Hi, Jeff. Yeah, I'm rolling on adrenaline today. That's about it. It's been an exhausting few days.
Walking on a dream.
Possible way. Yeah, we all got around all four. It was 47 runners in the end. We did do some jiggery-pokery on the day of the half marathons. So Rich, who he and Helen were kindly taking the photos through the weekend, we were really well supported in all sorts of ways. So Rich Baldwin's leg didn't make it. Basically, he hurt himself the previous week, 2 weeks before. He stepped on something and fractured a bone. So instead of running, he photographed. And it freed up a spot, so we were trying to find a last-minute available spot for Beth, who's Tom's partner, and away we went. So she got to run the half marathon unexpectedly. So we did have 47 runners in the end. I think about 10 or so did the 10K on the Saturday morning. Some brilliant performances there from a number of people who'd never done this kind of thing before. That was by far the best of the weather. The weather was heinous. The game that I was meant to be going up for on the Thursday got rained off before we even woke up. As a couple of Edinburgh locals said to me, they'd never experienced so much rain in one day. And that says a fair bit by Scottish standards. Yeah. So that kind of framed the weekend. That was Thursday. And by the time we reached Saturday, we got a little bit of respite. It was quite a lovely day, actually, but little did we know what would happen by Sunday morning. It was sheeting down with rain. It was absolutely torrential. Thankfully, like the start of the half marathon, the first 45 minutes, we got a little bit of, I wouldn't say clear air. It was still raining, but it was more of the drizzle variety. But it got heavier and heavier, and our marathon runners, of whom there were about 6, they did it really tough through the slop, as did we in the back half. So, but
at least you don't have to stop for drinks. If it's raining that hard, you just open your mouth as you go. I assume that would, that could make you faster. What I want to see, I don't know if this is logistically possible, but what would make me want to tip in money is if someone did all of them. If someone does the 10K, then the half, and then the full.
Someone did. Someone did the 10, the 5, the half, and the full.
Yeah.
So you can, because there's a 5 after the 10, so they ran the 10 and the 5.
Yeah.
My thinking was you'd need to do the half marathon in about 80 minutes to make it work. So it must be a pretty decent runner, right? They've gotten around, been driven back to the start line and gone again. So there was the option for that to raise money for a separate charity. But I mean, our quickest marathon runner was Ben White and Izzy Westbury. They'd never done one each, and Ben rattled off a 3:18 and Izzy a 3:35 in the. I can't stress how horrible the weather was.
They were swimming the English Channel, not running a marathon.
And they both got through in extraordinary times. And then you've got people like Will Palmer and Sean McGiven, who both committed to doing the full marathon when we were doing the half marathon last year. I wonder whether they were questioning their life choices when on the starting line. But they both got through. In Sean's case, he got hurt part of the way through, but he toughed it out. In Will's, you can tell from all the photos of him, he just looks under so much duress across 4.5 hours or whatever it was, but a massive effort on both of their parts. I mean, everyone's kind of got their own story with this, right? So I mentioned we had like Rich and Helen taking all these photos. They were drenched on the line. So many supporters who came out to watch, who'd done the 10K, who'd been involved before, who were just up supporting family members and that kind of thing. We had Josh Timmins, who he won the Lord's Taverners like performer of the weekend, the performer of the fundraising campaign more generally because of his enthusiasm. He and RJ were going to win it anyway, and then he decided to jump on the piano in the pub after. Which I mean, if you do
usually
something
frowned
once,
upon. to jump on a piano. But.
Well, yeah, quite. I mean, if you do something once, it's an occurrence. Twice is a tradition. The same pub as last year, where Jeff, you might remember, we had Will and Claire, who did her first half marathon as well, by the way, and she did a great job. But the pair of them ran the show on the piano. This year, they were both so knackered. Will played a couple of songs, Claire played one. Josh took over and played 3 sets of about an hour each. As my voice is still knackered from all the, all the requests that were going in, and about 50, 60, 70 people ran the piano, and all the rest of the people in the pub just joined in with us, and they'd all finished a marathon. It was beautiful, wholesome stuff. But Josh was front and center of all of that. Mentioned RJ Sugavanam, who was the first person to start fundraising. There were personal bests everywhere. And on the fundraising, by the way, we've just hit 27,358 all up in the GBP. So we're perilously close to 30,000, our goal. With the gift aid, we're already there. That's the charitable donation the UK government makes to help.
I didn't realise. I didn't know this existed, but there's a UK thing where donors in the UK can allow the charity to claim back what would be the tax deduction, effectively.
Yeah,
and so that's another $4,000 on top, which means that there has been 31,000 plus raised. You would like to see the baseline number say 30 because you like neat round things. So if anybody wants, if someone wants to help Adam's compulsion to have round numbers, and you want to push it up towards 30, that would be great. The more the better in terms of what we can raise. But whichever way you slice it, it's been a remarkable success from everybody who's really put into the fundraising, and everybody who's put their hands in their pockets over the last month. Thank you all so much for being involved.
It's been extraordinary the last week. I think we were going at about 1,500 quid per day. And almost all of that comes from our Final Word community, by the way. This is just like listeners to the show or people seeing the Final Word social media accounts and deciding to contribute with it. It's a huge deal. I mean, we had wonderful supportive messages from Mark Curtin, the chief executive of the organisation. David Gower sent through a great message the night before too. He's a beautiful man, David, and getting behind what we were doing with our runners. And next year is the 75th anniversary of the Tabs, and I don't think it's unrealistic that we've gone from 14 to 47. Why not have 75 runners next year to reflect the 75th anniversary? Especially, I don't think there'll be many who've done it this weekend who wouldn't want to go around again. And there'll be partners and friends and so on who've experienced this by extension and want to be part of it. So, start thinking about it now. It could be your first half marathon, could be your first 10K. We will make it work for you. Just wanted to send some thanks to our Taverners friends. Sadiq Ahmed, who runs fundraising there, he's been unbelievable for us across two years now. There's nothing he won't do to help us raise money. Ben Collins, who's been on the tools as well, happens to share the same name as my little brother. Again, he joined the Tab since last year. He's been a tour de force. He ran the half marathon with us. We finished within about a minute of each other. Becky Howie, who I have a fair bit to do with at the Tabs, she ran her first ever long distance run, did the 10K for us on the Saturday morning, and was terrific the whole way through. We had so many people offer support in different ways, offering accommodation. I stayed with the great Abs for a couple of nights, again, the nicest human being in the world. Since I've last been with Abs at his place in Edinburgh, now on the wall of his kebab joint, they've got his special printed up there with a photo of him. So you go in there and go, can I just have the Abs, please? Which kind of says a little bit about the kind of guy that he is.
Well, you can't spell kebabs without Abs.
Yes, and we see a lot of Abs around the place, and it's always nice spending time in his presence, as it is Ed Edgecombe and his family who've put up Rach and my family the last 2 years, and it makes it that much better being able to have that kind of comforting environment. And Ed ran the half marathon with us the first time that he's done something like that. Paddy McKeon for looking after my kids on the train with Rach, which was a big effort. We had Paddy Hargraves on that same service as well, which was terrific. And I could cite everybody here. But the guts of it is it was a terrific thing to do as a podcast. The charity are chuffed, we're chuffed, and roll on 12 months from now, we'll do it all again. Yeah,
all right. You'll do all of them, do the whole lot, do the full suite. Find someone. We need to find someone mad enough to do it.
I think my knee. I was sort of saying I'd do the full next year, but I think I've realised now. I was tracking towards a very good time, and then about halfway through, my knee does as it does, and I bettered my time from last year, but I was about 15 minutes slower than what could have been. I just don't think my right leg has it in it to run a full, but I'll be doing the half again. I'll be trying to beat my time again, and that's what it's all about.
On the Sunday night, as it was in Sydney, I was at the Elephant Tracks farewell show at the Opera House, which we talked about on the show a few weeks ago, about that record label and why they're so special, and of course the theme song, the intro song at the the start of our show, is Urthboy, who ran that label with a bunch of other people for the last 26 years, you'd call it by now. Amazing night as well. I was sad to not be able to be in Edinburgh, but I had to do this. I had to be here for this. It's been such a big part of my life for most of that 26 years, really. And almost everyone who's ever been on the roster, with a few notable omissions, was able to get down to the Opera House, be on the bill, this huge mashup of all of these artists, this massive crowd that turned out to see it, like to see what started out as a bunch of ragtag musos knocking around in the inner suburbs of Sydney, selling out that venue. They sold it out in less than 24 hours, and it was on in the middle of the Vivid Festival. So the Opera House is lit up, the harbour's lit up. There are tens of thousands of people milling around the streets of Sydney, and then going in there to see it packed out and hear everybody play and get on stage together for one last time. It was pretty magic.
There was a Urthboy presence on Sunday night, and there were many requests for stories for Josh to play on the piano, and I was going to request it in the ball pit as well. Just sorry to go back to what we were before, but just to segue through, we had about 40 of us in this massive ball pit, thanks to Hayley Fuller, of course, our balls correspondent, and so much more than that. By the way, I neglected to mention Hayley before. I should name check her; she's been an absolute giant in all of this. But as we were all in there dunking, I mean, the best way I can describe it is like a childhood ball pit. And I was thinking to try to signal to the DJ, can you play this song? We didn't do it, but we did think of it, and it did come up a lot. So it's all fitting that at the same time you were over doing your thing with them at Elephant Tracks.
Yeah, it was quite emotional, really. It was quite sad in a lot of ways to think that this is the end of it. But I suppose you have to think of those blandly philosophical statements about not being sad it's over, being glad that it happened, etc., etc. Yeah. But it's been a busy week for us, and it's going to be a busy month to come. We'll be meeting up in America in not many days from now. We put out the episode about the French Ghost games that we've been working on for a while, so that's in the feed before this ep. You also put out your Richie Benaud's Blue Suede Shoes episode, the book club review, which you enjoyed doing.
We did. I did it with Steve Kinane, because Steve's a bit of an expert in that period of Australian cricket history, and he's written the book about backyards, and so many of those players, 6 of them on that trip, had been part of his book. And I'm like, well, who better to co-host, having been on book club himself, but him? And he wrote the book review for Richie Benaud's Blue Suede Shoes for the Financial Times, so it all tied in splendidly. And Harry Ricketts was a great guest. We got a message in from Rob Richardson, one of our patrons. I just wanted to say the episode on Richie Benaud's Blue Suede Shoes was worth my whole year's support. So I'm really pleased to hear that. It's a really nice thing that we're now doing with the books, but this book's one that I think will satisfy a lot of Final Word listeners. If you're the kind of person that wants to go back in the time machine, this book goes into so much detail. It's so vivid in the way that it tells the story. And it was so nice to be able to do that as well while we're in Scotland and having Steve part of it. So cheers to him.
It's going to be a big election year as well. We've got the US election in November. We've got the UK one coming up on the 4th of July, and we've got the end of the long Indian election process on the 4th of June. That's when the result is supposed to come in anyway. 4th of July, an interesting take, as somebody pointed out. That Britain are used to losing things on the 4th of July, but it's gonna make things interesting, given that we won't be around for a fair bit of that. But the process is well underway.
I just to make a vaguely serious point, like, it is relevant to what we do. You might say it's political, it's politics, but it does inform the way the game is governed as well, especially when it comes to that Indian election, right? We all know how influential Indian domestic politics is on the way the game is presented in India, and thus how the game is governed now around the world. So we
know who's running the BCCI and which families they're in, and who's making the appointments. So
it's all very clear. No one's disputing any of this. Now, it's not to say there's no way in the world Modi could lose. I can't fathom, based on what I've been reading during the week, and his language has escalated yet further. There was those reports, was it last week or the week before, about now suggesting that maybe he's been sent by God, like maybe he is divine. So that's not something we're overly conditioned to reading or hearing from political leaders when things are in normal times. But these are unusual times over there in terms of having a government striving for a second re-election, but having a leader who is so unbelievably popular. Like, that isn't something where in an adversarial political system, after a couple of terms, you're used to the government being quite unpopular, right? Yeah. It's a different thing going on over there.
You're scraping through, like a 52%er is on two-party preferred is treated as a landslide, basically.
Quite.
Let alone getting to 53 or 54. Oh, absolute landslide. So, yeah, we're not used to that. But I was wondering if there was anything lost in translation. It's hard to know with these sort of things. But yeah, the line of saying, when my mother was alive, I used to believe that I was born biologically. After she passed away, upon reflecting on all my experience, I was convinced that God had sent me. It does sound pretty well on the wacky scale. So, and some of these, I did look around for some commentary out of India, and there was a fair bit agreeing that this was on the wacky end of the scale, rather than some more sort of symbolic thing that just hadn't crossed the cultural barrier.
And if there's a change of government over here as well, remembering that the government of the day have invested quite a bit of money into cricket recently, it'll be interesting to see how that might change or grow or diminish. I mean, we don't.
Well,
really
the good
know
thing is national service means we'll get a lot of volunteers preparing pitches. So there'll be a lot of volunteer ground curators rocking up at small clubs across the length and breadth of the country, doing their 1 weekend per month, because everybody knows that young people don't work in jobs that require them to be available on the weekends disproportionately. Definitely not.
There are always promises that a government makes when they're on the way out the door. This will be the iconic, promise that was made that never went. It'll be a thing that gets used in retrospectives. Oh, remember that thing that happened 20 years ago when the Sunak government was hitting the fence? That'll be the national service announcement. And everything else about the first few days about him visiting was at the Titanic Museum on day 2, getting drenched on day 1 without the umbrella, and the fella who plays it. And I'm not saying can't do anything about this, right? But the D-Ream, things can only get better. Playing out and drowning out the first presser.
I assume there must have been memes with like the Andy McDowell bit from Notting Hill, standing out in the rain outside the front door. I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy. I'm just a man standing in front of a country asking them to vote for me. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't see it, but I'm sure it was there.
Yeah, it was funny. It was good, the whole thing. But we're not going to do a weekly wrap of the campaigns. But it is worth noting that 2 of the big 3 are at the polls effectively right now, or at least preparing to go to the polls. In India, they've been at the polls for a little while, but it's been done over a number of weeks.
Right. The poll for the winner of the Indian Premier League has been run and won. Mitchell Starc versus Pat Cummins in the final. An odd looping of time. Last week we were recording during the first qualifying final, which was the Kolkata Knight Riders smashing up Sunrisers Hyderabad. That was the double chance qualifier. It started with Mitchell Starc ripping out a couple in the top order. Travis Head out second ball. Sunrisers 4 for 39. Not making enough, getting it chased easily. And then a few days later, the same teams are in the final. Mitchell Starc rips through a couple early. Travis Head's out first ball, not second ball. They're 4 for 37 this time, or 47. And both games you have Pat Cummins doing repair work with the bat down the order. He made 30 and 24 in those 2 games. Both times you had a team that has been making 250-ish scores this season, ending up way short. They made 159 and then 113. And both times Kolkata chased it 2 wickets down comfortably. Both chases, Venkatesh Iyer, 51 not out in one chase, 52 not out in the other chase. Shreyas Iyer not out at the other end both times, after Ramanullah Gurbaz made a score opening the batting, having replaced Phil Salt. So basically they just played the same game twice over. They just had a couple of other games in between it.
Just a nod to Shreyas Iyer. Like, I've always loved the way that he plays the game. I think he's been treated harshly. I think that, the way that he was rounded upon when playing serviceable cricket, but not outstanding cricket at different points and dropped and so on. I hope this lays a bit of a line under that, or places a line under it, and he gets the chance to represent India again soon.
Yeah, there's no worse spot to be than the out of favour player in the current Indian 11.
Yes.
And it's usually there's one spot in the top 6 which is like the electric chair spot. You just got to sit there and jiggle for as long as until people's attention moves somewhere else. The Royal Challengers Bangalore story came to an end. They had that hot streak. They rode it into the finals, and then they bombed out immediately. They had won 6 in a row. Rajasthan had lost 4 in a row and been washed out in a 5th. So, you'd be thinking they're every chance to do it. But no, they made 172. It's an okay sort of score, but they had a long boundary and a short boundary, and they kept hitting catches out to that long boundary. Faf du Plessis and Virat Kohli both got out that way after a decent start. Ravichandran Ashwin, final word fave, did the job for Rajasthan. There loves getting Australians out. So he got Cameron Green and Glenn Maxwell out because it's what he does is take the wickets of Australians. Maxwell first ball to finish off his very unhappy season in the IPL. And Rajasthan chased it easily. They've been not great since Joss Buttler went home, but they chased it 6 down, and that included a couple of wickets late when the game was pretty much decided, so it was more comfortable than it looked. Ashwin batting at the far end as Rovman Powell took down Lockie Ferguson, the New Zealand quick, who has been belted all around the place this season. But you often see this thing, right, that the team, you sort of see it in the second half of the top 8 as well in the football code that we don't talk about on this show because that would be wrong because the show's about cricket. The team that wins the first knockout game usually loses the second knockout game. They've sort of spent all their pennies on that first one. So Rajasthan bomb out to Hyderabad chasing a similar sort of score. So it was 176 to win as opposed to 173. But there was no dew. So in the first run chase, it was dewy, and that makes a big difference. This time wasn't dewy. They were in Chennai. The ball started to grip after Jaiswal made a good start. Pat Cummins got a wicket early, but Jaiswal was looking good, and then it was Chennai. The spin started to work, so they just got all their spinning all-rounders on. Hyderabad, this is, and so they had Avesh Khan bowling, and then Abhishek Sharma, who's been opening the batting and absolutely smashing them this season, came on to bowl as well. They took 5 between them, the almost part-timers, really. And Rajasthan were nowhere near it. So that got Hyderabad into that final, where they got pumped again. Happy days. You got smashed once, you got smashed again, you've got a template. That's how you live up to it. So Mitchell Starc, the key there. Like, it's funny, you look at his season numbers and they look pretty bad. 14 games, 17 wickets, but going at 10.6 and over, you think, ooh, that hasn't gone too well this season. But he's got these group stage games where he goes for figures like none for 50, 1 for 55, these kind of games. And then in the 2 knockout finals they play, because they win them both, 3 for 34, 2 for 14. The ball that gets Abhishek Sharma out is a Starc classic. It's not the Yorker, but it's the one that swings in, angles away across the left-hander, hits the top of off stump. Like, Starc's just got that ability to hit the stumps when he's on, and has done it so many times across his whole career. And then Travis Head, the opposite kind of season. It looks like a great season. 4th on the runs list, 567 runs, averaging 40 plus, striking at 190. He looks awesome, but the end to the season, he'll hate it. So he's making scores through the season like 100 off 41 balls, 89 off 30. And then his last 4 games, the 3 knockout games, plus the one that needed to boost them up the ladder, 3 ducks in 4 balls in 3 of those innings, and then 34 off 28 in the other. So a pretty unhappy end to the season for him.
Yeah, has it in him, doesn't he? Head to have runs where he makes consecutive, I think it was 3 and 4 in Test cricket as well at one stage, wasn't it?
He's made a lot of Goldens in the last 6 months.
That's okay. You kind of accept that. Yeah. Like you mentioned the Maxwell thing as well. Like, if you're going to be on a shit streak like he's been on, and he's talked about it publicly, right? You want him to still be trying to clear the boundary because that's still his job. So yeah, he gets caught first ball, but like that's his job to try and do that. So that's fine.
To have that theory, you'd rather see a player get out for naught first ball than like make 14 off 14 in a lot of instances in T20 cricket.
It's just about being like at peace with what your job is, and so it proves for Travis Head. But yeah, Starc, to make the same point that everyone else in the entire world has made. That's why you get paid the big bucks to win trophies, and that ball that will go down as a classic in his career, and it goes alongside a number of others. And he's prioritised Test cricket and prioritised the chance to do that at Test level for Australia, and most of the time it's turned out pretty well for Australian cricket, having him fit and firing and available at his peak. This will, I suppose, be the start of a new phase of his career where he's able to play a lot more short-form cricket on the franchise circuit, and this will be the sort of moment that ensures that his, shall we say, his superannuation scheme, the last, I don't know how old he is now, but let's say he's in the last quarter of his career or something like that, it'll be a very lucrative one because they know that at his best, he's the guy that can take a game away in a heartbeat. Player of the final in the grand final and player of the final in the other one as well.
Whack it into Cbus Super, Travis. 8.89% average return on the default My Super account over the last 40 years.
I know Mitch and Elisa Healy bought it. Was it a $25 million house or something? I might be misreporting that, but I did read something on social media a few months ago. So they're already set. But, if he wants to add a few more quid, well, that's a way of doing it. And he'll have plenty coming in from India through the, as I say, you'd assume he'll play IPL every year now, right? Like, why wouldn't he? This is the next bit for him. I'm pretty sure the Australians next winter don't have anything going on other than a series to the Windies in June. This will fit in quite neatly. I'm sure he'll do it again.
Yeah, why not? Definitely next year. The 2027 is the next really busy year that they've got. Although, so the IPL guys who are going home for 2 days and then zipping out to the T20 World Cup is pretty extraordinary. We might come to that in a minute. Just to stay in India for a moment. Quite interesting, all the machinations around who's going to get the India job after Dravid finishes up. So JL comes out and says, "Nah, not interested. Wouldn't." It wasn't clear that he was actually approached, but maybe he was asked if he'd be interested if he was approached. I don't know. If the right person were to ask me that question, I would have to consider my answer. But that's not what he said because he's not Michael Clark. He said it would probably be a bit too hectic, basically, and I don't know whether he threw KL Rahul under the bus.
Mate, bit too hectic, bit too much pressure. Yeah. What about the Nazis were coming at them at Gallipoli, mate? Yeah. That was fucking pressure. Abba-jacka.
And Messerschmitt in the trenches at Gallipoli. That's pressure. Mate.
The Viet Cong nearly fucking got them, mate. Then Ricky Ponting said that his boy wanted him to do it. We thought it was quite nice, actually. They quite like being in India and they love but he also acknowledges that he's got, as we've joked before on the show, they always talk of their portfolio of responsibilities now. And Ricky Ponting's got like the dream life, right? Why would he want to be an international coach when he can balance his responsibilities so elegantly?
He's got to do all the product selection for Ponting wines, obviously, because I'm sure they don't bottle a rosé without Ricky having approved it. I'm sure he's hands-on. He's got to sign all those cricket balls that they put into the boxes of a dozen that then they charge you 50,000 Qantas frequent flyer points for. He's a very busy guy.
I think he's done. I don't think there are many players in their post-cricketing lives have done it much better than Ricky Ponting. He might be right at the top of the tree.
There weren't many in their cricketing lives who did it better either.
True. So the boss of the BCCI, he'll still be the boss of the ICC in the fullness of time as well. He said they haven't spoken to any Australians. There was a statement that went out saying the reports about approaches made to Australians post-Dravid were wrong. The pull-out quote here is, we are focused on identifying individuals who possess a deep understanding of the Indian cricket structure and who have risen through the ranks. So, I think that's fair enough too, by the way. Rahul Dravid coached the Indian under-19 side before becoming the senior coach. I don't know who this person would be necessarily, but
probably
I don't think it's a bad thing. Yeah, whoever it is, it doesn't really matter. It's like the fact that they're looking to
he's been involved at the academy a lot and next level down and whatever. But
so time will tell. But I like that they're just sort of it's not incorrect to say that coming from the system and being of the system most of the time can be a good thing. It's sometimes the other way. In England, it's often been the other way with coaches from outside. Steve James wrote a terrific piece on this very topic in the Times yesterday in reference to Andrew Flintoff and comparing that and contrasting that to coaches that have come in and been really good for England from Zimbabwe, for example. But that was a slightly different tilt on that piece. But nevertheless, it's an interesting debate that continues to tick over.
Yes, I suppose it's they do tend to go for the marquee names in India. You go from Shastri to Dravid, with Laxman being the favourite next. But why would is Ricky Ponting making that up? It wasn't a formal approach, but somebody sounded him out. Somebody in a senior position asked if he would be interested. That's not it.
I think it's like soundings versus approaches, but you can use your own, whatever language you want. This often happens in politics, right? Yeah, have you been formally approached, or have you just been kind of sounded out? The two things are subtly different.
For the break, if you are in the UK, you should enter our Westfield competition because Kia Beals won it in week 1. So there's a 50 quid gift voucher every week, and the big prize is the big World T20? It's not even called that anymore. T20 World Cup watching party in London at Sixers at the Cricket Palace. You can go there with a bunch of your friends. You get free lanes, free games. Everything's laid on for the night. That's a prize that Sixers have put up. So thanks to them. And it's not as easy as some competitions because you've got to actually have paid attention to the show. There will be a question. You get the Westfield app. It should be live on the app by the time this episode goes out. There'll also be a URL if you can't access the app, but get the app. That's the idea. And you go there and it will ask you a question about something that happened on the show. It'll be a one-word answer, and the question will be clear enough. What was this? Who was this? How many of this? We're not going to flag it when the answer comes up. So you need to have paid enough attention to know what was going on when you listen to this weekly show. It's pretty easy to do, and we know that Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City are more extra and less ordinary. So why not?
Yes, that's right. So Kia Beals, big week for Kias over here. Not a bad time for that name to win the gong. And it just reinforces the great partnership we have with Westfield, that they're putting in a 50 quid voucher every week. And then this there'll be a big watch along as well, separate to the prize watch along. But it's a pretty good prize, right? You get to take a bunch of your mates out for a big day out, watching one of the World Cup games. And we'll be in touch around all of this as we have our winners grouped together from the weekly comp. All pretty straightforward. Yes, I did find out during the weekend at Edinburgh as well that Sheehan's a bit of a cult hero, you know. Yeah. Hasn't really met many of the people on the trip. He had met a few of them, but not all of them. And they want more Sheehan.
Okay.
They love his ad reads. So we might just find a way to do that.
All
Maybe I'll get him on to read one of the ads that he's written himself.
Yep.
Something along those lines.
Okay. Well, when
anyway,
you have first-rate ad copy written by a guy who is named after a relatively obscure Australian Test cricketer, couldn't be more final word areas. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not familiar, Paul Sheehan is who Sheehan is named after, which is absolutely sensational. That's why we call him Shagger, because that's Paul Sheehan's nickname. Right. That's Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. We'll be back in just a sec. We've gotten through very little of our show. A lot more of it's to come.
It's the final word. It's Jeff Lemon. It's Alan Collins. Hello, Alan. Alan Collins. Nice to meet you.
Big Al.
Big Al. You can tell that everybody's tired. We are all tired today. But luckily, we only have an intensive month of travel to the World Cup ahead. And one thing that will be helping us do that will be the virtual private networks that we both have from NordVPN, so that we can access whatever we need to access from anywhere around the world. Just because we're in Guyana, Antigua, Barbados, New York, Dallas, whatever, doesn't mean that we won't be able to tell the internet that we're in Albania or the Faroe Islands or Mozambique, a place of our choice. Wherever it is most convenient for us to be, we'll be able to be there, and we'll also have all those extra layers of security when we're on less than trustworthy Wi-Fi networks in public places where we don't know who set them up and who's accessing them. All of that is the kind of thing that you get through Nord.
If you're a real Mozambique Idol diehard and you can't miss an episode as it's going live,
and you can't stream it outside the country.
You can't stream it outside the country if you're in, Bermuda, Bahamas, and you need to. I was going to say watch the Pretty Mamas. No, watch the Mozambique Idol show. Well, you'll have the availability to do so. If you subscribe, nordvpn.com/TFW, 30-day money-back guarantee. Go with them. We're with them anyway because it's one of the quickest. I think it is the quickest. Or if it's not, we'll claim it. It's quick. It's as quick as a Curtly Ambos, bros. Ambos.
Good one, Alan.
Do that again. Bananas. That could be embarrassing. It's as quick as a Curtly Ambrose bouncer at the Wacker in 1989, and you're Jeff Lawson down the other end. That's what it's like pace-wise. NordVPN.com/TFW. Join up, help us, all that. You know the drill.
A surprising number of people think that I'm Jeff Lawson. Like not so much in person, but particularly written down. If I've written something or if he's written something, people will respond to one of us as though we're the other one. I guess
I get wrongly identified as Andrew Collins quite a lot.
Yeah.
And as I'll often say, I wish I won 3 premierships for Hawthorn, like Andy Collins did.
Yeah.
So Jeff Lawson and Andy Collins, they should do a podcast together. Henry and Andy together. We can facilitate this, Jeff.
I don't wish that I iconically had my face broken on national television. I'm quite happy not having done that. But there we are. Right. So we're talking about travelling. We're talking about the T20 World Cup. Let's motor through some T20 international stuff. First of all, funny that the Australians might have 9 available players when they have a warm-up game against Namibia. 5 of the IPL guys got to go home. So Cummins, Starc, Head, who all played in the final, as well as Maxwell and Green, who played in the bit before the final. They've got warm-ups against Namibia and the West Indies. Good chance they'll only have 9 for the first game and maybe for the second as well. The best bit about this, Brad Hodge could be back in national colours, Adam. He's got a short-term gig with the coaching staff. He's doing some assistant coaching, presumably because he's a T20 expert because he played 93 seasons of Big Bash. It's pretty much a Vicks takeover. You've got Andrew McDonald, Andre Borovic, who never played for the ones in Victoria but did play second div and age group for Vicks and so on. And then you've got Brad Hodge in there as well. I mean, he was playing for Australia in the 2016 tournament, and he might be out there wearing the national kit one more time. What a beautiful thing.
Andre Borovic may not have represented the Victorian first team, but a friend of the show, former guest of the show, Louis Cameron, played first team cricket for Victoria, 2 Sheffield Shield games.
He might get a call.
And I note that he didn't respond to my message. He's in Trinidad at the moment with the team, cricket.com.au, gun journalist and SCN commentator occasionally with us. That he didn't respond to my reply on Twitter saying, I hope you got your sprigs with you, big boy. Maybe he's been given the nod. Maybe he can't tell me that he's got his sprigs with him. Maybe he's playing.
Right. Okay.
I'd pick him.
Okay.
He still gets it up, Louis. Plays ones at Brunswick in the subbies. He stopped playing Premier Cricket to focus on his day job a couple of years ago. But watch this space. They could do a lot worse.
Okay.
He has bowled with the Aussie team in the nets fair bit over the years, covering them.
I'd love to see if Clancy Cinnamon, the camera operator extraordinaire, was out there. Big bit of swagger, big moustache. I opened the batting a couple of times in games we've played in and basically just clears the front leg and goes over mid-wicket. You could do worse. Might as well. He could sort of do a Travis Head switcheroo, right-handed, but a lot of similar vibes. That's all I'm saying. If he could make the first ball duck that Travis Head would have made. It's possible.
It's a shame I'm up there. I'm available for selection. I've got Greg Matthews' energy at the moment. I'm never retiring. Okay. So moving on from that, we have got the United States of America is where we're going as we talked about. And they've had a big week, Jeff. Now, this is going to require you. I've been, as you probably detected, quite busy with all things marathon, half marathon, etc. I know these things have happened. I don't know much about them. For instance, Team USA beating the Tigers of Bangladesh. This doesn't augur well for the Bangers, but what a fillip for the US on the way into a home World Cup.
Yeah, Bangers got mashed. They did thrash the USA in the third game of the series by 10 wickets, but that didn't matter because the USA had won the first and they'd won the second. They won chasing, they won setting targets, they did it all. Bangladesh do have a habit of losing to teams they probably shouldn't lose to. That's been quite a consistent thing, but you got to start somewhere. This is the USA beating a full member nation outright. There's a big gap between 9th on the rankings and 19th. It's not like tennis seedings or football or something where there are 60 good teams knocking around in the world. Like the disparity in resources and that these different teams have to draw on is so huge. Like it's a massive achievement. The ground at Prairie View in Texas, tipping it's not a really high scoring ground, but first game, Bangladesh make 158, slow start, couple of wickets, and then Urthboy, whose work we enjoyed watching at the 50 over World Cup, and Mamadullah, who also will never retire, they added 67. Stephen Taylor, we've talked about Stephen Taylor a bit, the opening bat for the most part. He's the one who made the USA's first century in one-day cricket and so on. Did a job with the ball here, 3 overs, 2 for 9 with some loose spin. And then the USA were nowhere near it really in the chase. They had Mustafiza bowling, Sharaful Islam, they had Richard, all of them taking wickets. USA 94 for 5 after 15 overs. They get to a point where from the last 20 balls they need 50 runs to win, and it hasn't been that high scoring a game. And then Harmeet Singh, who played initially in some age comp stuff for India and now has ended up as a USA player. He's batting at 7, goes nuts, hits Mustafiza for 6 twice, Sharaful for 6 in the next over, straight down the ground. And Corey Anderson, ex-New Zealander, chimes in with a couple of sixes of his own. And in the end, they win it with 3 balls to spare. And I mean, it's great. But you feel like it could be one of those anomaly chases, right? Like sometimes a partnership just works. Someone swings the bat, and it just happens to work that day. They get away with it, but they turn around and they win the next one, and in a more workmanlike way. They're defending. It's a different style of winning, I guess. They defend 144 in the second game, and they don't do it easily. They have to bowl out Bangladesh, who at one point, even when they're 9 down, they've still got the number 8 at the crease. They've got 4 balls to score 7 runs. And you're like, well, it's not impossible, right? Like you're a decent chance to do that. Like a good team with a half decent batter at the crease could get 7 off 4 to win a game, you would think. Find a boundary somewhere, run a 2, get the single, away you go. But it doesn't happen. The 10th wicket falls. They bowl out Bangladesh with 3 balls to spare. And, and the USA have won not just a game, but won a series. It's quite an extraordinary thing.
It is. And look, the fact that they've got, whether it's Taylor or Corey Anderson more realistically, right? Like he's got the experience. He's played in the World Cup final. He's been slugging dingers for years. If it turns out that like one of them gets hot and they win, I don't really know what their prospects are of winning a couple of games, but to get out of the group, you're going to have to win 3.
Yep.
So it's improbable. But the fact that they've now beaten a full member nation in Bangladesh, they've got Canada in the opening game at home. There's no reason why they wouldn't go in favourite in that matchup, even though they'll be ranked lower than Canada are. This could be a really interesting storyline over the next couple of weeks.
Well, I think what's impressive is they took down good players. So that game where they built up the total, they started with Taylor making 31, Monik Patel 42, sort of built a foundation. They took down Shakib, none for 35 off his 4 overs. Yep. They took 2 for 31 off Mustafiza. So after bashing him for those 6s in the first game, he picks up 2 wickets, but that's decent going to get sort of 7.5 and over off such a dangerous bowler. And then, just put the squeeze on in the chase immediately. Sumya Sarkar out first ball, caught and bowled. Then Tanzid Hassan is hooking. And there's another bit of a rebuild from Kridoy, who's made a habit of doing this time with Shanto, put on 48. But then Anderson's in the game. He effects a run out. He hits the stumps with a straight arm and with a bent arm. So, gets 1 in the wicket column as well.
He's bowling.
Yeah, he's bowling. Anderson's
I didn't know
bowling.
that.
Yep.
I thought he was done.
No.
Yeah, because he had bad case of shaggers, didn't he? He wasn't bowling for...
Yeah.
Didn't he have the... he had the op, didn't he? The one they fuse your spine together.
I can't remember if he had the op.
He had that one.
He has one of the best 50 over World Cup bowling strike rates of all time. About 15 wicket every 15
we were big on that, weren't we? This goes back to early days of the podcast, or maybe when we were making videos around this stuff, that his strike rate's unbelievable, but it was just his back couldn't keep doing what he wanted to do. I thought he was back as a specialist.
Well, he bowled a couple overs. He bowled a couple overs and did well. And so there's a point at which Bangladesh needed 47 off 43 in this run chase, 4 wickets down. Like, you should stroll that. A good team should get that comfortably. And then there's an intervention from Shadley van Shalwich, who has a good name to say, left arm, quick, South African originally, now playing for the US, takes a couple of wickets. And then Ali Khan beautifully finishes it off, the talisman for so long for USA. Takes out Shakib, who's still there at that point. The game is still Bangladesh's with Shakib there, and then takes 2 of the last 3 of the tail, including the winning wicket with a little nick behind. So, two games that had 3 balls of difference, 1 defending, 1 chasing, 1 on both, and they're away.
Good stuff. When talking about T20 internationals, multiple or plural, I just want to note here that Charlie Reynolds during the week has started the campaign that it no longer be seen as T20 internationals when we have a series of T20 internationals. Yeah. Instead, T20's international, like attorneys general or governors general.
Courts martial.
Really into this. courts martial. I'm all in on this. It's Charlie's idea. But we can lead this campaign. From this point forward, Jeff, we are now talking in terms of T20s international when referring to more than one in a series or in a tournament. I think that's going to be a final word.
I don't know if I'm in. I've been thinking about this over the last day or so because I like the idea initially. You know, it's our kind of area. It's niche. It's annoying. Yep. It'll irritate the right people. But
correct.
But then I was thinking, well, it's where does it sit in the precedent? Because the framing of T20 International comes from the framing of One Day International, and a One Day International is a compound adjective more than a noun. Like one day, you've got a hyphen. It's an international that is one day. It's not one day isn't the thing. You don't say I'm playing a one day. You can play a one dayer because that's what we've colloquially turned it into. But you can say I'm playing a T20, but you can't say I'm playing a one day. You can say I'm playing a one-day game. I'm playing a one-day match. I'm playing a one-day international because it's a descriptive, it's an adjectival phrase, not the noun itself. The noun is the international. So with that precedent, with a T20 international, doesn't it have to follow the same logic that even though a T20 is a noun on its own, in this case it's an adjective because it's describing the kind of international. What kind of international is it? A one-day international or a T20 international? In which case you pluralize international. That's my initial take.
That does have some logic to it, but I'd go the other way and say that why is it even called T20 to begin with? It's due to the
marketing guys at the ECB
having. Well, it was the journos, wasn't it? Self tells his story about how a bunch of them were sent off to help develop a name, and they came back with this. But if the word 20 started with a different letter, it wouldn't be called T20, would it? It's just nice.
Well, it's like when people say T5. They should play some T5 games, and you're like, no, it would be an F5 game.
That's missing the point. Yeah, that's right. It kind of misses the point. It's alliterative, and that's why we go with T20 and T10. Coincidentally as well, that works because 10 starts with T. So I think we can...
Can we call the 100 the S16.4?
Well, the 60 with the 6 is kind of for the same reasons, isn't it? Because it works on that front, the thing they do in the Caribbean. So, look, I agree. What you said there makes a lot of sense.
The Australian rapper 360, which was spelt numeral 3 REE numeral 6 IXTY. You know, it's that kind of creative thinking we need to bring in.
Like you see those number plates where it's, the ones that slip past Vic roads where people get their own fun stuff in there about... I don't know. I'm not going to say what because I'll get in trouble. But I just think that if we just go with it anyway, I appreciate your point. It does make sense what you're saying there about the pluralization. But for the reasons that you state before, it'll annoy the right people. It'll become a bit of a thing. Well, it won't. But at least in our world, it will.
Among 60 people, it will become a thing.
It'll be a point of difference. Anyway, speaking of the T20s international that were played on the weekend, there was Jofra Archer making his return for England against Pakistan. This is all kind of funny. I was enjoying's the wrong word. I was taking in a little bit of Jofra discourse, shall we say, on the World Wide Web last week. There's always...
You can't help yourself.
I've got a bit of a... Yeah, and you shouldn't, right? Like we're mature enough and experienced enough not to pay attention, but we do because, we're human beings as well.
You've lived in a house with Frozen playing as often as you have, and you still haven't internalized the message of let it go.
Yeah, maybe. But this idea that, like, Archer shouldn't be given opportunities for England because, I don't know, I guess to some he's not playing for Sussex in the county championship, the Aaron Banks style logic. But no, this idea that he's been gifted these national contracts.
He's not playing for one of the 17 counties.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not providing a return on investment because he's been given contracts whilst injured. Well, it's forgotten that he was playing international cricket last year in South Africa on the back of very little cricket, and he immediately made an impression. Jofra being fit and then making an impression, one sits next to the other. He doesn't need heaps of cricket before. And the fact that he's been playing a little bit, played those club games in Barbados and, of course, the game for the Sussex Twos last week. But was there ever any real doubt that he'd be able to, provided fit, make an impact right away? So, of course, you get him in because he's fucking Jofra Archer. He's one of the most capable cricketers I've ever seen. He's fit. Okay, therefore, he should be up for selection, right? So... and it also flows into this idea that, well, Archer never played Test cricket again after Joe Root broke him. And this is total Mandela effect stuff, right? So the Archer game in question, he played more. I went and did a bit of myth busting during the week. He played more Test matches after Joe Root ruined his career and he never played again. That was one innings, right? where he bowled 42 overs. England were out in the field for 200 overs, right? 201, I think it was. He bowled 42, so just a little bit more than a fifth, which is a significant proportion. And he did bowl a lot for England in the 19 Ashes as well.
Yeah.
But they only bowled once in that Test match. He played the next game as well. He wasn't incapacitated to the point where he couldn't play.
Yeah.
Back-to-back Test matches. He played the next week. And he played all those Test matches during the lockdown summer of 2020 and in India in 2020-21. So 6 before and 7 after is the actual breakdown. But it's now been allowed to seep into the conversation that it was that one day in New Zealand and Jofra never bowled again. Well, that's just not true. But nor is it true that
came out.
Archer shouldn't
the whole
get.
Thing came
there
out.
are some players
walked off the field on its own. The spine.
Yeah. So I'm in his elbow as well, right? When he fell over in his bathroom during lockdown and cut himself and hurt his that was Joe Root's fault as well, and all his other injuries that have. But yeah, I think that with Jofra, you can't have the same rules for everybody. It's impossible. You can't have. You do need to have rules for some and rules for others when it comes to international cricketers. And I'm not at all surprised that he strolled back in and straight away looked at business.
Yeah. Well, he went okay. It was kind of funny because when someone's coming back after a long layoff, all the journos do the count how many days it's been or find some sort of timely thing in the cycle. Or the last time Jofra Archer played, this person was 4 British Prime Ministers ago, or whatever you can do with that. So they were all citing the number of days because it's been a year or whatever it's been. Did all the build up to the Headingley T20, and then it just pissed down rain the entire time and they didn't get on. So then everyone just had to recalculate and add 4 more days or whatever it was for the next one at Edgbaston. Now he hasn't played for this many days. England 183, Butler 84 of 51, still in good nick as he was in the IPL. Phil Salt opening, Will Jacks 3, Bairstow at 4, which is interesting if they go into the World Cup with that sort of configuration. Mohammad Amir back for Pakistan, by the way. I mean, I noticed this a couple of weeks ago that he was coming back, but we haven't mentioned it on the show. We talked about him recently on Storytime as though he was done, that things hadn't worked out quite so well in that sort of 2019-ish era, and he'd cracked the shits again for whatever reason and quit. And there were always those aspects of things involved in Pakistan. But he's back. Why not have Mohammad Amir back at a T20 World Cup? Let's see what sparks can fly.
I feel very much the same way as I do about Jofra. I mean, the fact that Mohammad Amir is coming in on the back of some club cricket in Essex, fine.
Yeah.
I don't even know when that stint was. No. Maybe it was 2 years ago. Fine. If he wants to play, if he's fit and good to go in the team, he's probably only 30.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit older than that now, but he's got cricket left in him. He has won a trophy for Pakistan, the Champions Trophy back in 2017 in no small part due to.
Yeah. I mean, he probably. So. I mean, if I had to. Well, what he was 18 in 2010, so he'd only be 32.
Yeah, time on his side.
Yeah. He could do an Anderson, play until he's 45. Now he's
got at least 3 more retirements left.
He's had time out of the
3
game.
3 more toys out of the pram. Long layoffs and returns to
change of government,
to the side,
change of admin at the PCB, etc. Anyway, he got tapped in this game, but he's back. Imad Wasim also back, punching some darts, taking some wickets. 2 for 19.
Wales finest.
Yeah, Wales finest.
From Swansea, isn't he, Imad, wasn't it?
Pretty much.
One of those facts you always hear on television. I think I've probably done it myself when he's been doing his game. He's from Wales. Imad, wasn't he?
I'd rather talk about like what brand of gaspers he's on when he goes off the ground. Anyway, Shaheen took 3. Jofra got a bat before he bowled, made 12 not out from 4 balls. Happy days. Came out and hit a 4 and a 6. More importantly, bowled without any apparent issue. It got whacked early. Babar Azam and Fakhar Zaman, who's in the middle order now, took 4, 4 and 6 from his first 5 balls. He got dragged, came back later on, bowls above 90 miles an hour immediately and gets a wicket first ball of that next over, caught in the covers. Absolutely bombs Ifti Mania for a while. Iftikhar Ahmed did not enjoy facing Archer, dots and ones for a long period of time. And then he gets another wicket late in the piece, a bit lucky, but smacked out into the deep and a good catch taken out there. So 2 for 28, bowled some heat, was up into the 90-mile range, the sort of 1 in 140s in the proper measurements that actually make sense. And it's encouraging, at least. You never know. There's always the potential for problems around the order. Wickets all round for England. Moeen and Rashid, the elderly spin duo, still getting around and doing their thing. Liam Livingstone in support of them. Reece Topley back until the next time he manages to injure himself in some kind of unlikely way. Chris Jordan and Archer, the quicks, bowled them out for 160. And that was that. But mostly it was the interest was in Archer, and I guess the fact that Joss Butler won't be there for the next game on paternity leave, which is not great timing with the World Cup starting in a few days.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what would have happened if the baby was due a week later.
Yeah.
I mean, some things are more important. I'm not doing that whole don't be there for the birth thing. I'm
pretty sure you can miss a couple of pool games in a
probably in that group. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, probably in that group, probably, yeah, fine. But there's that interesting tension that sits there at major tournaments. And now I've got a little earworm for the rest of my day. I'm going to be thinking about Iftomania. Remember the Phoenix song, Listomania? Think last Pacific, like a ride. Yeah. That's going to be rattling around in my head for the next couple of days. But Iftomania, if it's happening, I'm into it. Love Big Ifty. The man is 32 and looks like he's 72. May he continue to play international cricket against Jofra Archer for a long time. South Africa, we're playing the West Indies, Jeff. Give us some vibes here. We don't need to know much about these games, I don't think. I just want to know the guts of what's the overall, and what should we be looking for from the co-host, the Windies?
Vibes are that South Africa are shit right at the moment. Quentin de Kock can't get a run, or if he gets him slow. Anrich Nortje is being absolutely smashed. He got eviscerated during the IPL. He eventually got dragged after a few incredibly expensive games, and it's continued here. So, I mean, he's quick, but he's going the distance at the moment. Brandon King, Johnson Charles, Kyle Mayers, Roston Chase all made runs through these 3 games. West Indies won them all, won them comfortably, made 2 big scores that South Africa didn't get near, and then mowed down a chase in no time at all. That was a reasonable sized chase, but they did it easy. So the only sort of downside for West Indies is Jason Holder is out of the World Cup. Obed McCoy is coming in, so Holder made it through to the end of his Worcestershire stint and then picked up an injury in his last game, which is pretty unfortunate. He was really enjoying that county stint as well, by all reports. He was quite fired up about being there. But McCoy's bowled really well in this series in 2 of the 3 games, and so hopefully it's not too big a loss.
Yeah, I think Holder said he wants to come back and play another season of full championship cricket because he really enjoyed it. It's a shame that in his last game he's picked up that niggle. Some of our watchful, some of our 10K runners were in the pub for a fairly big session on Saturday night, as you'd expect. And they were watching one of these games. I don't know which one. And King and Charles were batting together, and on the screen had King Charles, which was quite good. Good. That's all I have to offer.
That's good. I like that. Well, I just want to make a note about West Indies spin and the fact that most of the tracks in that area tend to be spin tracks more than pace tracks these days. Gudakesh Moti, who you will remember from being out in Australia, where he was very ineffective as a test bowler, left arm flat, basically around the wicket a fair bit, driving it through. But that's the kind of thing that can really work in white ball cricket, and he might be their big weapon. He had an impressive run that got him onto that test tour in the first place, but it's just his style of bowling is less likely to work in test cricket unless it's in particular conditions. But across this series, 3 for 25, 3 for 22, 2 for 21. And he's been impressive. So I think he's my one to watch.
There was that tri-series going on during the week with Scotland, Holland and Ireland, which was meant to, I think, originally be in Scotland and got moved. Given we were in Scotland at one point, we're like, we might be able to watch this when we're up there in Edinburgh, but it wasn't to be. Ireland have just reappointed their coach for a couple of years, and they've played well. They're all in the World Cup, of course, but on face value, Scotland seem to be the team that, I mean, I don't know how they've gone this weekend, but they feel like they're the form side coming into this from the European trio.
Well, this is a boost for Ireland because they've had a shitty few months / couple of years in a lot of departments, men's and women's, and they won this. They won the 3 games that got completed. They won, and they had a washout. So each team played 4 times. They won in tight chases as well. This was at The Hague, which always seems a bit strange when cricket teams get taken there. But Slobodan
Milosevic match referee.
They won. had to check out early. They beat the Dutch by 1 run and then by 3 runs, and then they chased against Scotland with 3 balls to spare. So nerve-holding kind of games, which is important. It wasn't all Balbirnie and Sterling either making all the runs. So Tucker made important runs. Dockrell, Curtis Campher, Mark Adair really contributed in one game with the bat. And then Fionn Hand and Gareth Delaney, most impressive with the ball. So it gives Ireland a bit of a boost, I guess, going into this T20 World Cup. You'd be forgiven for being a bit flat around that place, as was detailed in the interview that you did recently with the chief exec. But Scotland and the Netherlands went 1-1 between them. Big margins in both of those games, and they lost their other matches to Ireland.
But okay time, but last couple of weeks, Ireland, when you consider the other cricket that they've been playing against Pakistan, a win there, but 2 close losses. I think they'll go okay at that tournament. We'll be keeping a close eye on them because they're playing in America, I think, from memory. Anyway, we've also got a fantasy comp going very quickly, Jeff, on our Discord. Get involved if you want. Greg in Yorkshire is arranging it on the Fantasy Cricket Discord sub-chat. But if you want to get in independently of that, cricketxi, so 11.com.
Yep.
Cricket 11, but XI for the purpose of, Roman numerals for the URL. Get your pens ready. Here's the code. Capital D, capital O, capital U, all capitals. How about that? DOUSJVLI. That code again. Jesus. The supplementary numbers. DOUSJVLI. And you can join the T20 Final Word fantasy game.
DOUSJVLI. It's like a fucking Jetstar code. One of those. Please put in your booking code. We've sent a message. We've sent you an SMS for security reasons. No one's trying to hack my Jetstar account. All right. What are they going to do? Are they going to rip me off for a cut price ticket to Cairns? Like, leave me alone. Now, that is, I trust that is happening without us using that as a vehicle to flog a bunch of NFTs and bullshit to people. This particular fantasy cricket.
I certainly hope not. I don't fucking know. I'm just doing. I'm but a. This is. Let's call it the. If it is, it's an unofficial Final Word fantasy game. Then I like to believe this is not a one of those ones you see being promoted in those shit tip websites that are just basically trying to get you to buy an NFT.